Good evening. Welcome to Photo Mentor TV. Tonight I got a special event for you tonight. This is part 2 in an interview I did with Rick Gerrity. Rick has been traveling around the country photographing America, and he's gone to the smallest towns in America, the one-person towns, and he's got some amazing stories. If you haven't watched part 1, I encourage you to go back and look at that. That's what happened on, I think, April 5th, I think we did that one. Maybe not. No, I'm sorry. It was the 29th, March 29th. Be sure and look at that one. That was a great interview. Anyway, so this is part 2. The interview went so well and so long that we wanted to break it up into 2 parts. And Rick's going to get into showing some more of his amazing images. So definitely stay tuned for this. You do not want to miss it. Again, tonight we're doing part 2, Photographing America with Rick Gerrity. I am Lee Love, and I'm glad you guys could join us tonight. We do this every Tuesday night at 8 p.m., and we also do a bunch of other things. The first Tuesday of the month, we do photo reviews and a bunch of other topics. So anyway, the point of this channel is to educate, encourage, and mentor new photographers primarily. But we're thrilled you're here. We'd love to have you join us on a regular basis. So if you don't mind, I would appreciate if you'd hit the subscribe button there on YouTube so you'll let you know when we're going to be doing another show or what we've got going on. Also, if you're interested in education, we also have a channel or a site called Photo Mentor Academy. And that is also where we've got all the material we cover here in this show mostly comes out of that course material. So if you go to photomentoracademy.com and put your name and email address in there, we'll notify you when we have a lot of other things going on that I think you will find interesting. Anyway, as I said before, tonight, part 2 with Rick Gerrity. You guys are going to really enjoy this. Going to go back. I kind of give you a quick, just a couple of minutes of what we talked about last week, and then we'll get in, and then it'll get into the new stuff. But I think you guys will really enjoy that. Before we get started, I got a couple of announcements. One is that I'd like to wish James Torrenzano a happy birthday. James is, I think he's 18 now, maybe going on 21, maybe. Mentally, of course, not chronologically. James is also a friend and also one of the members of the Photo Mentor Facebook group. So, James, happy birthday on that. Glad you are here tonight. Hopefully, you're here tonight. So, anyway. Yes, that's correct. We do have, if you go to the blog, as I said before, on Photo Mentor Academy, and you will find there's a really nice article that Sue-Ann did on James regarding his cancer and his photography and some things like that. I think you'll find it very, very inspiring and also insightful. So check that out on photomentoracademy.com and /blog. Okay, before we get started, one last thing is I want to use this quote by Albert Watson. I think it's very appropriate for tonight. And he says, it doesn't matter if you're photographing a porter in the market of Marrakech or photographing the king of Morocco, which, by the way, Marrakech is in Morocco. You have the same sympathetic approach to everybody. Be nice to everybody, basically. And I think that you will find, listening to Rick, he embodies that same mentality and an attribute. He just loves people. He really knows how to meet people and connect with them. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy that. So let's see where we at here. Okay, here we go. Let's take it away, Rick. Whoops. I'm about to introduce you to a man who is in search of wealth. He zigzags across the United States in search of a product so rare Some might consider this treasure he seeks no longer obtainable. What may surprise you is he does not seek this fortune in the cities where most of us might expect to find wealth, such as New York, LA, or Chicago. The man's name is Rick Gerrity. Rick is so determined that he has literally driven the wheels off of his Nissan Xterra. If you consider the multiple sets of tires, wheel bearings, and the 505,000 plus miles, along with his endless hours on the road, some might consider him obsessed. Regardless of Rick's obsession, I was thrilled he agreed to talk with me, and he revealed a secret, that he has indeed hit gold, or pay dirt as the saying goes. You see, Rick does not seek the same fame and fortune that so many nowadays. He seeks something much more valuable. He seeks to discover the human spirit. He seeks character, and his reward is the long-lasting relationships he has developed with the men and women in small towns across America. You're about to get a rare insight into people often forgotten in this country, the part of the country the media refers to as flyover country. See, Rick's journey has been to meet, photograph, and tell the stories that make up the real backbone of our country. His adventures are documented in thousands of images that will convince you that he has indeed hit a gold mine. Rick is always excited to share the treasure he has found, and it is my hope that you will gain a little insight into a man and why he is so determined to share his story.
Oh, this photo is Elsie Eiler. She is the sole resident of Monowai, Nebraska, the smallest incorporated town in the United States. And it's just, what a pleasure. That was window light. That's Elsie. While we were having a conversation, she looked out the window, smiled because one of her friends was coming in, and I just grabbed that. Same thing here. Now, interesting story is, I've been back to Monowai a bunch of times. Now, every time I wound up going back, Elsie had a Coca-Cola shirt on. And I thought to myself, what is up with the Coke shirt? She said, well, you're always coming in on a Thursday. She said, and every Thursday, my Coke guy comes and gives me a new Coke shirt. She said, so I always have one on by the time you get here, and it's something new and different.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's really just funny. Yeah, so she had her Coca-Cola shirt on, and the last time was just said Coke, and she had a bunch of different ones. It's really pretty funny, but that's just window light just happened to capture her just as natural can be, standing in front of her bar.
And you said this is the smallest town, she's the only person that lives there, incorporated town?
Yeah, smallest incorporated town in the United States.
Huh.
Yeah, wow. Only one person. If you look up Monowai, Nebraska, the only thing that pops up is Elsie Eiler and her husband, who passed several years back. But they owned the Monowai bar.
And where's this from?
All right, so this is in the Monowai Tavern. And this is, I got to think for a second. I'm drawing a blank. Barry DeKay. Now, Barry DeKay, he was one of the first people that I met. Barry and I are friends on Facebook, and he is currently running for state senate in Nebraska. It's funny because I'm just looking at pictures, and we're going back and forth, and I'm like, Barry, I'd vote for you, but I live in New Jersey, so I can't really do that. Super nice guy, cattle rancher, very involved in everything. So we're sitting around, we're drinking coffee in the morning, and I just captured him looking across at one of the other guys that was sitting across the table. All available light. There's a big window over there that kind of lit up his face, and then all the horrible fluorescent lighting and everything else. It's crazy, but it all seems to work.
Yeah, definitely.
And to capture these pictures without any additional lighting. Going into a place like this, and somebody says, well, what kind of light do you use? Can you just imagine going into a place like this and using anything other than available light?
No.
It would be so disturbing and annoying to everyone.
Well, this gentleman here looks like he's in the same location, and I can imagine if you were to pull out a light, he'd probably go, no, thank you.
Yeah, that's Rocky Wilson. Rocky and I get along great. He helps Elsie out with the bar and does all kinds of different things in town. He's also a great cook. The last time I was there, he brought in a big bag of brisket He's like, you got to taste this. You know, and he said, I've been spicing it up and trying to get it to where I want it. What do you think? You know, Rocky, I've probably had back to Monowai 5 times, and each time I've gone back to and Rocky's been there. So he lives in the town over. Again, look at the light.
Yeah.
Just looking, I sit there and stare at the light, and the way the light hits, it was just, I'm making these images, you know, on a 50 millimeter 1.4 lens on these. And I just, you know, you can't replicate this kind of light. You just happen to see it and capture it, and it just gives you the whole vibe of being inside this kind of dimly lit bar with some window light coming in. So it was, that kind of thing is just, you can't make it up.
Yeah.
You can't look at this and be like, you know, it's great. So, all right, so moving on from Nebraska to Sanderson, Texas. This is Albert and Sherry Thorne. Huh. Albert and Sherry have they have a cattle ranch, and they're just the nicest people you ever want to meet. I met outside the desert air where I was staying. I heard a noise outside like a machine running, and I looked over, and it was Albert. He was on a backhoe, and he was digging a flat spot to move a propane tank. And he was just basically doing it to help out the desert air. He had the equipment, and he was like, you know, let me just do this. I'm going to move this tank real quick. And I went over and I said, man, I got to photograph this guy. He just looks like the real deal. I talked to him a little bit, and he said, well, you know, you can grab a picture of me. He said, but you really got to go back to the house. He said, you know, we've got a cool John Deere collection, and, you know, you want to meet Sherry and everything else. And so I said, yeah, sure. And we're right down the street. So he climbed off the backhoe, and we walked down the street, and we wandered around inside the house a bit. And we're talking, and I said, well, I'd really like to get a photo of you two before I go. And, you know, I'm telling you, this is one of my favorite photos, because most of the time when you photograph someone, you say, hey, I want to get a photo of you two. It's an awkward moment for that couple to try and figure out what they want to do. Sherry just went over, nestled up next to Albert, put her head on his shoulder, and I was like, damn, this is just anything I could have possibly wanted. This worked. He's got a can of Coors. And it was just great. It was a really awesome shot.
Well, and you can see it in their eyes too. That sparkle in their eyes is really what makes you know, it's they're so alive and so in love.
They were just on a cruise, and I was watching. You know, we were going back and forth with photos from the cruise. They're just a wonderful couple, super nice, and. Sanderson is a whole story in itself. I did a small video on Sanderson that had, oh my God, 6,700 views. It was shared a bunch of times. They show it at the Desert Air Motel with everybody that checks in.
Oh wow!
And it's all about Sanderson. This is a quick shot of Albert when we were walking to the house. He just turned, looked at me, and I grabbed a quick shot right outside in his yard. It was just, it's one of those things where, you know, it's time and place. The light was perfect, and I just wanted to grab a quick shot.
Nice.
But this is Sanderson is I can't even begin to tell you all the things about Sanderson. The people there, Jimmy and his wife Sandra, Jimmy Davis. I had homemade chili and cornbread and listened to great music there. Hung out. And I'm constantly going, you know, I keep telling them I'm going to get there. I'm coming back to Sanderson. I don't know when, but I'm coming back, because that was one of the best experiences I've ever had with the people. They were just unbelievable, you know, how nice they were.
Well, chili and cornbread can't pass that up no matter where you go.
Oh,
you know, that's
and cold beer too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right, so this is an interesting. This is Paul Evan Peterson. Right, so he lives in New Jersey. He was in an episode of Anthony Bourdain's that covered some stuff from New Jersey, and I saw him. He's a musician. He's got a really unique voice. If you look him up, Paul Evans Peterson, it's Pedersen. I was looking him up, trying to find him. I finally found something, and I was in his neighborhood coming back from Fortescue, New Jersey, and I found a phone number. I called the phone number because he has a jewelry business that he does with certain kinds of like beach glass and things like that. I called the phone number, he answers, and I said, you know, I've been trying to find you because I want to. He said, well, where are you? And I said, well, I'm down the street at the Wawa. And he laughs and he says, you're like 2 blocks from my house. He said, I'll put the coffee on. Come on over. And I said, oh, man, you're kidding me, right? So I drove over. Literally, it was 2 blocks away. I went out of the parking lot, made a left, went 2 streets, made a left, and his house was right there. So I went in and we sat down, and we sat and we talked, and he played a little bit of music, and we laughed and carried on. He said, well, come on next door. I'll show you my studio. So we had a little building next door where he does all his glass work and all his other stuff, his jewelry. And we went next door, and he's sitting there, and we're talking, and he just turned, and this is all available light using the window.
Wow.
And he is quite the character to photograph. I mean, wow. I mean, I looked at him in this light, grabbed a quick photo. Even he said to me, he said, man, he said, no one's ever photographed me like that. He said, I'm old as hell. I said, I think I'm older than you are. He said, no, man, I look old. I'm like, come on, you are like, I can't even begin to tell you how lucky I am to photograph you.
Huh.
And since that point, that picture of him with the guitar, I actually had an event in Philly where I wanted him to come. Everybody said, you know, we want to hire a model. And I was like, well, I've got a model. I'm going to get a hold of Paul, and he's going to come, and he's going to light everything up with his guitar and everything else. And he did. We spent the day together in Philly going around and had a group of people that were just enthralled with the way he looked, the way he sounded, and just we had an absolute blast. And he's just another friend that I'm in touch with all the time. He's like, when are you coming through town again? You got to stop, have coffee. It's just, you make friends like that, and it just sticks with you.
He definitely looks like the kind of person that I would also be attracted to as far as photographing. Wow, this guy's an interesting character, and
oh yeah.
So.
Well, you know what's interesting too is Anthony Bourdain was very tall, and when you watched Anthony Bourdain on any of his shows, he never appeared to be as tall as he was. He was like 6'5" or 6'6".
Wow.
So when I saw a picture of Paul next to Anthony, I thought that Paul was smaller, because I didn't know how. Paul is bigger than me. I got out of the car, and this massive guy comes over to me, and I'm like, damn, he's a big man. So I said to him, I said, you were standing next to Bourdain. I mean, how tall is Bourdain? He goes, oh, he's a beanpole, man. He was really tall and skinny. I said, wow, that's amazing. I would have never thought that from seeing him on all the shows that I watched, because he kind of fit into everybody else.
Yeah.
It was interesting. But Paul's quite a character, and really, really makes my day every time I talk to him. He's just so much fun to be around.
So this is now we're in a kind of a different genre here. We're looking at more
I wanted
New York.
To throw in a little bit of street photography. It's funny because my version of street photography compared to other people's street photography can be a bit different. So when I wander around the streets, I try to think of things as being a little more informative and a little more interesting. So this guy's just waving a paper. This reminded me of something you would have seen a much longer time ago, say maybe the 60s or the 50s, waving a newspaper. And this was just a few years back. So this was right in the center of New York City, right outside a subway station. This guy was selling newspapers, and I just thought, I was shooting a lower angle, kind of a waist level thing with one of the other cameras I had with a tilt screen. So I was able to shoot up a little bit and get a little more of an interesting angle. And I just thought this was pretty cool. So some of these images are a little more powerful. So this image was shot in the morning as people were just going to work, and totally ignoring the fact that there's a guy laying on the sidewalk, shirtless, either asleep or dead. No one really paid any attention to him. I actually went over and talked to him afterwards to make sure he was okay. And he was, in fact, just sleeping, past with everybody walking by. This particular shot is another person sleeping on a sidewalk with this little girl, like, wondering why her mom is, like, dragging her past this guy. She's, like, trying to figure out why this guy is sleeping on the sidewalk. But these images are, you know, a little more depressing than they are anything else. But it is life, and sometimes needs to be documented. This guy was great.
Yeah.
This is Washington Square Park. I mean, he was feeding the pigeons, and the pigeons just came and hung out with him.
It's kind of a caricature of himself in a way you think about it. It's like something you would expect to see in a movie.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. It reminded me of Home Alone.
Oh, right. That's right. I forgot about it.
Yeah, it was funny. He's quite a character. That was really an interesting day in Washington Park. These two guys are having a conversation. These two old guys. One guy's got a walker, the other guy's got a cane, and then behind them there's a guy sleeping on the ground.
Oh, right.
They were just talking back and forth, and, you know, very animated. And I just walked by and grabbed a shot, and then I went over and talked to them. I said, "You guys are arguing?" They said, "Oh no, we do this every day." You know, they're friends, and they hang out on the same corner, and they're just barking at each other and complaining about something. But it was fun to photograph. They were quite an interesting group. This guy. This is an older shot. This is funny because a lot of people have seen this shot, but it always resonates to me. So this guy's looking at me, and he first looks at me. I'm crossing the street, and he just kind of lights into me about what I'm going to do with my camera. And I said, well, I'm not doing anything. I'm just documenting life on the streets here. I said, I'm not going to photograph you. I said, I don't want to, you know, I'm not going to upset you in any way. And he started to talk to me. And I said to him, so what's up with you? He said, well, you know, I'm having a tough time. I'm on the streets. I got a drinking problem. I've got kids. He starts telling me his whole life story. And I said, well, you know, at some point, would you mind, you know, could I make a photo? And he looks at me and he says, sure, go ahead. So he just looked at me here, and I just grabbed a quick shot of him. And after I did that, I took him over to a deli and let him buy basically whatever he wanted as far as food and stuff. And he bought himself a big sub and a couple things for later on in the day. And after that was over, he looks at me and he says, would you mind if I give you a hug?
Oh.
And I said, not at all. Not at all. So I gave this guy a big hug. He hugs me back. He says, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. He said, I had no idea. You know, I thought you were just another guy with a camera that was going to, you know, make me look bad. I said, no, that's not my intention at all. And so that was that. So I have this guy who is a random guy who's yelling at me at first. I de-escalate the situation, talk to him. He tells me about his life. We have a go in, get a meal, and then he winds up giving me a hug. So
now, was this photo taken before or after the deli? Do you know?
Before.
Yeah. Because he has that look on his face, that kind of that expression, like, you know, you looking at me?
Yeah. It was funny because I asked him if I could take the photo, and then after I did take the photo, I showed it to him, and he said, well, you know, you think I could get something to eat? I said, well, absolutely. I had planned on, you know, doing something for you. So we went over and we got something to eat, and that's when he gave me a hug afterwards. But yeah, he was a genuinely nice man. I mean, he looked like he was, you know, threatening at first. I mean, anybody else would have been like, oh God, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
You know, I just talk to people, and, you know, I'll put the camera down. I'm not paying any attention. I'm not going to take any pictures of anybody that doesn't want to be photographed. That's not my point. I don't want to make anybody angry or make them feel bad. I'd rather. So in this particular shot, he said to me, I would really like to have this picture. So I said, well, how can I get it to you? He said, well, I don't really have any way of, you know, you getting it to me. I said, well, how about if I just go down the street, I'll make you a print. And I did. I went down the street and I got a print made at a CVS in New York City and came back and gave him an 8x10 print.
Wow. That's so cool.
No, this is the kind of thing that, you know, maybe that day was a day that he was feeling pretty bad, and maybe I made them feel a little bit better.
I think you probably did, and I think that's one of the effects you have on people, Rick, is that you just really are genuine to them, and it makes them feel important.
Well, I mean, I actually do care about these people. That's the difference, and hopefully they can sense that, because I'm just not a guy with a camera that's going to walk by and take a picture of them and not know anything about them and just ignore them and
Yeah.
get the picture for my own benefit. I'd rather be able to share a moment, a story, whatever, and it's just it's interesting.
So this next picture is one of my favorites, and it's because it's so artistic and so graphical, and it definitely uses black and white to its fullest, and of course diminishing lines, that type of thing. Really, tell me a little bit about this image.
This picture, I was on a photo walk with a group in the city, and this is the Oculus in New York City, the PATH station in New York City. And I was up above on a set of stairs, like a little balcony type thing. And it was one of those things where the light was incredible. I looked down and I was like, oh my God, this is great. So there were people everywhere. And I stood there and I waited. I said, there's got to be at some point one person that's going to break that line and walk out of the darkness, and I'm going to be able to capture that. And at some point, this guy stepped out of the darkness, out of the shadow, and stepped in, and I just grabbed that shot. And right after that, probably 10 people came out of the shadow and walked into that. But this was, again, time and place. I got the shadow of him on the ground. The lighting was just incredible. I don't know whether I'd ever be able to pull that off again. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
Well, and again, it reemphasizes my point of seeing. You saw this image in your head before you ever took it. And I think that's...
Yeah, I was waiting.
Yes.
I wanted that badly, to have one person in there, because it was just so graphic as far as having one person just walking into that light. I just thought it would be fun.
It's a beautiful image. It's just wonderfully done. So congratulations on that one. That's a cool one.
Thanks. I got lucky on that.
Yeah, well, luck has a lot to do with it, but I don't know. Luck is something you plan for, though, as well, right? If you're not prepared, you don't know how to take advantage. You don't recognize luck when it comes your way. Yeah. So this guy here looks like this could be an album cover or CD cover.
Yeah, right. Okay. So this is, I just had to throw this in. I was thinking last night after I got done, there were just a couple of people that popped up that I just thought about, that I just had to share. So this is my friend Jay Redfeather. And Jay Redfeather is a Blackfoot Indian from Arizona. Jay owns Open Road Cowboy, which is a leather shop. He does incredible leather work, makes holsters and sheaths for knives and everything, and vests and guitar straps, and his work is amazing. And he's also an amazing guy to photograph. I met Jay going through Williams, Arizona. One year I just stuck my head into the leather shop, and I saw this guy, and I was like, whoa, this guy is perfect. And I thought, wow, I've got to go back and meet him another time. So I looked him up on Facebook. I found him and said hello, and I sent him the picture that I had taken of him, which was not nearly as good, because it was he was talking to somebody, and it was just not as good as this one. And I said to him, hey, I'm coming back next year. I got to drive through Williams to go to CES in Vegas. I'd like to stop by. And he's like, man, you can stop by any time. Just let me know when, and I'll make sure I'm at the shop. And I had stopped by a couple of times, made photographs, and we just kind of hung out and talked and laughed and had a good time. And then later on, I had a Route 66 workshop, and I had to include Williams. I was like, we've got to see Jay Redfeather, because people will love to see Jay.
He's got everything about him, his eyes, the mustache, just perfect.
He's a great guy. He's so good to photograph, and he's such a nice guy. Yeah, I'm friends with him, his girlfriend, Erin. They're just amazing people. This particular shot I took with a group that I brought to Jay's place, and they were all, he was just talking to the group, and we were just laughing and carrying on, and we were making photographs of Jay, and I just grabbed this quick one. Again, that's all window light. He's got a big window in the front of his place. And
That's an American flag behind him. Is that what that is?
yeah. You can't. I had this shot in color as well, but he's just like an icon. The black and white, I just felt that it was just a better rendition. But he's a great guy. I'm in touch with him all the time on all his work and everything else on Facebook. And,
now, this guy here looks very familiar. Either I've seen this photo you've shown before, or somewhere. Who is this man?
I wanted to put this, I forgot, I wanted to put this up to another spot. This is Luis Mendez. Luis is an iconic New York street photographer, and he uses this old speed graphic and a flash to take Polaroids of people, and he signs them and gives them to them in a little frame. And this was actually in Manhattan, or this was Brooklyn. I normally see him in Manhattan, and we both bumped into each other in Brooklyn while I was doing a workshop in Brooklyn, and he was as surprised to see me as I was to see him in Brooklyn. And I went over, and this is so funny because it's an interesting shot. The light there, when I was about to take this photo, and one of the people that was on my workshop said, well, we should move him out of the light. He's got that harsh light on his face. I said, don't you dare. Don't you move him, because that light on his face is going to make this photograph. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, just stay put. And I made the photo, and I showed them. And they're like, oh, yeah. I said, if you put him in the shadow, there's just no drama.
Right.
Lighting is drama. You have to learn what's working and what's not. I mean, that light hit that one side of his face, lit up his eye, the other eye's in shadow. I mean, I just love the way the light came across him. And he is, and if you look up Luis Mendez in New York City, he is quite an icon. He's been in the business and been in New York City for a long, long time.
Well, too many new photographers are afraid of shadow, and shadow is what makes an image, gives it depth. And without depth, it's just flat.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was doing this shoot with a girl on a horse. Right? She's a cowgirl. Her parents own a farm. She owns horses. And the one woman said to me, she said, "We got to move her into the shade." I'm like, "We're shooting during golden hour. She's got gorgeous light on her, and you want to move her to the shade?" And everybody else in the workshop's like, "You want to do what?" Like, move her to the shade. So obviously you don't know light. You're not looking at light. And it was funny because I said, no. If you want to move her to the shade, you're going to do it after we're all done, because we're all having a blast, and the light was gorgeous, and it was just perfect. And this girl has incredible eyes, so the light was hitting her eyes and just lighting up her gorgeous blue eyes. And you moved it to the shade, and it was like, okay, great. Now let's shoot a nice, boring,
flat-looking image.
Flat as all. No,
yeah,
it was terrible. So,
and then,
all right. So I had to throw this in there. All right. So here's one guy. Let me just resituate myself. Here is one guy that said to me, "I don't want anything to do with having a photo taken." This was in a bar in Showtown, Florida, which is Showtown Bar, and it is in Gibsonton, Florida, Gibsonton is where all the carnivals meet in winter. So all these people that are there are mostly carnies. They're mostly people that are involved in the carnivals, whether they're performers or whether they're helping out or whatever. So I was sitting at this bar because I went to this place knowing that this could be an interesting place to photograph. A friend of mine had told me about it, and I was coming back from a commercial job in the Florida Keys. So I just came up the west coast of Florida and stopped in Gibsonton. And I'm sitting at the bar, and I'm looking at this guy thinking to myself, I know this guy from somewhere. Where would I have ever seen him? Well, it turns out that he was in a video that someone tried to do of this bar, and he was the guy that was telling them to get out of the bar.
Oh, wow.
And he didn't say it that nicely. Told them to get out with their video camera and everything else. So I said to him when I sat down, we're sitting, and he's sitting one seat over from me in the bar. And I said to him, "You look familiar to me." And I'm thinking to myself, and finally I said, "Were you in a YouTube video?" And he said, "Yeah, and what part of that video don't you understand?" And I was like,
Ooh.
"Oh, so you're not really interested in photos." So he said, "No, not at all." I said, "Oh, all right." I said, "That's fine." And we sat there for a little while longer. He said, "So if you're not going to take any photos, what are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know. I guess I have a beer and a burger." You know? So I sat there for a little while longer, and he said, "You don't even have a camera." I said, "No." I said, "I left the camera outside. I don't want to make anybody mad." He said, "Well, if you want to get a photo," he said, "Yeah, I guess I'll agree to it." So I said, "Okay, that sounds good. Let me go out and get my camera." So I go out and I grab my camera. I set it up to 1600 ISO, open it all the way up, figuring that it's going to be dimly lit in there. I just want to be able to do this quick. So I bring the camera in and I sit down at the bar, and he lights a cigarette. I take the shot, and he puts his lighter down and he says, "So what do you want me to do?" And I said, "Nothing, we're done." And he's like, "What do you mean we're done?" I said, "No, here's the image." And he's like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me, man." He said, that's a cool image. That's the best image I've ever had of me.
Oh,
That
wow.
just shows me." And I said, "Well," I said, "that's all I wanted to do." I said, "I wanted that image. That image is perfect for me." And then the next photo is funny because this guy was sitting across the bar from me, and he was just not even making eye contact with me. He just wanted no part of me at
He
all.
was listening and he didn't want to have anything to do with it, huh?
Nothing to do with me. So fine, I take a picture of the other guy, and he looks over at me and he goes, "Well, what about me?" I said, "Well, what do you mean, what about me?" He goes, "Well, you're taking a picture of him. At least take a picture of me." I said, "Well, you were the one that, you were just ignoring me and didn't want to talk or didn't want to do anything." He said, "Well, yeah, but, I didn't know what you were doing. Cut me a break." So I'm like, "Well, sure, man, I'd be happy to take a picture of you." So I just grabbed him when he was just sitting there staring over at me. But, it was just a spur of the moment kind of thing. And, just having a conversation and just sitting in a strange place with strange people. And again, just, "Well, you got to come back here when everybody's here."
Oh, really?
What's a good month to come back? So they're like, "You got to come back in the wintertime."
Yeah.
When everybody's here. He said, "This place is packed solid with some wild people." I'm like, I can only imagine. So now, I follow the Showtime bar and everybody there on Facebook, and they comment on my stuff. I comment on their stuff, and they always say to me, "Well, when are you going to come back? We're looking forward to having you come back and photograph some really cool stuff." And I'm like, "Well, as soon as I can get south, I will." And it's the kind of thing where I love to go back to places because I've made contacts there, and they see me come in and they're like, "Hey, you're that guy from New Jersey. Cool."
Didn't we talk earlier? You said it was like you felt like 10 degrees up there today. So today would have been a good day to go down there.
Yeah, today would have been a good day. Somebody just posted that they were leaving Florida and it was 86.
Oh,
So
wow.
good luck coming home because it's 10 here.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
But anyway, so this is photographing America is far greater and far larger than just a photograph. It's everything I've experienced, everything I continue to experience, and I just want young people as well as anybody else to kind of understand what they could accomplish by just being out there with a camera.
I'm glad you mentioned that story because that was one that I remember you telling before, and I was really intrigued that you went down there and they were semi-hostile, didn't want anything to do with you until they finally realized, hey, this guy's okay.
Yeah. I mean, you have to really kind of feel your way around. You don't just kind of barge into a place like that and start taking pictures. That's a good way to get booted out.
Yeah, or worse.
So yeah, that could end poorly for you, for sure. But so this image up here, this is Pete. All right, Pete is from Chloride, Arizona. Now, some people have seen this image before. Chloride is a small little mining town in Arizona, between Kingman, Arizona, and Las Vegas. I stopped there a zillion times on my way to and from Vegas because I would come up Route 40 and have to pass Chloride. And I usually stay at the Shep's Minor Inn which is a tiny little place. I have to duck my head to go through the door because it's made in the 1800s. A really cool place. And every day at 1 o'clock at yesterday's restaurant, which is attached to the little motel or hotel, they have karaoke. So I was sitting there hanging out, and this guy walked in and sat down, and he just looked, you know, he was just a picture waiting to happen. And I started to talk to him, and I asked him if I could make a photo, and he said, "Oh, sure, you know, no problem." And I just grabbed him while he was watching the other people performing the karaoke. And I mean, this image to me, it brings me right back to Chloride, to the day that I was sitting there and all the other people that were involved that day. I remember everything. And there was a guy that was with him that said to me, "Please don't take my photo." And I said, "Sure, yeah, that's no problem. I won't do that." He said, "I have my reasons." He said, "I like it here." He said, "I've been in other places where I've had my picture taken and I've had to move."
Wow.
I thought, okay, well, we're not even going to go there.
Yeah.
I don't know why or what. I said, but yeah, it's no problem at all. But we sat and we had a couple of beers together, and we talked about all kinds of things. But I never made his photo. I made Pete's photo, which was, you know, more than I was happy with, along with so many other photos that I made in Chloride the many times that I was there. Chloride, the cemetery is amazing at night with the stars. It's completely in the middle of nowhere, so there's no light pollution. It's a very, very cool place.
So this is the last photo that you have here. What's the story behind this one? This is kind of unusual
All right,
as well.
so this was just a kind of a funny story behind this whole thing. This is Kelly McCulley. Kelly and I have been friends for probably 6 years. I randomly took a photo of a truck in a truck stop, and it was for Roan Trucking, and it was just, I was testing out a wide-angle lens and something else, and I just photographed this truck, and I sent it to Roan Trucking on Facebook, and I said, "Hey, I just grabbed this photo of one of your trucks. I like it. It's a pretty cool photo. Enjoy." I got a message back, a private message, and it said, "Hey, my name's Kelly, and that's my truck." And I thought, wow, well, that's cool. So we started talking. She said, "Yeah, I'm a lady trucker." And man, the bells and whistles are going off in my head saying, "Oh, wow, what a story this could be." You know? So I started to talk to Kelly, and we exchanged phone numbers. We were texting back and forth. We got on the phone, we talked, and I said, "I'd really love to come and photograph you sometime, somewhere." And it was funny, she said, "Well, I'm going to be in Chuckey, Tennessee, and I have to deliver a load to a steel mill." Now, she's a flatbed trucker, so
Wow.
her stuff, she's using chains, tarps, you know, 9 yards. She's not a big woman. And I said, "Well, you know what? I have to go again to NAB, and let me figure out timing. Maybe I can swing by and actually make this work." Well, long story short, yes, I did make it work. I have a ton of photographs that I have of her that day unloading her truck in the rain, along with some video, in Chuckey, Tennessee at this steel mill. And I've shown those a bunch of different times, and I just wanted to, I'll leave that for another time. But Kelly and I have remained friends. We talk back and forth. She lets me know if she's coming to Jersey, if I can make it. I meet her at a truck stop. We have dinner. We hang out, and we talk about the road and where she's going. She just texted me the other day. She said, "Where are you?" I'm in Washington State. I was like, wow,
Oh my
I'm definitely
gosh.
not there. Yeah, she travels the country. She's got a brand new, I think she has a new Peterbilt now. This is an older truck that she had a few years back. But very cool lady. She's a cancer survivor, and she's totally as tough as nails. I mean, watching her in the rain, unload that truck, roll up the tarps, handle the chains. She said, I said to her, "Can I help you?" She said, "No, you're just being my way."
Yeah.
She said, I got this down to a science. I said, I feel so bad standing here watching you work so hard. She said, "It's all part of the day." Her nickname is Smiley because she's always smiling. She was smiling in the pouring rain. Just a very cool experience. And again, I'm in touch with her all the time. We text back and forth.
Well, you know, being a trucker is a tough you got to be tough as nails, I think, anyway, and to be a woman on top of it is and sir,
The
she gets
stories that
hers.
she has told me about the
I can imagine.
resentment that they have, male truckers against a female trucker. Instead of them being helpful, they're the exact opposite. So it's rough.
Wow.
So anyway, yeah, so photographing America will continue as long as I'm living and breathing, and my truck's still running, and if it doesn't, I got to back up. You know, I'm always going to keep it going.
So I have two final questions for you then, because as a teacher, you also, you know, number one, what is your approach to helping people, new photographers, in creating stories? And number two, you know, what in your opinion creates a compelling story photographically?
Well, you know, I mean, you don't have to go far. So Peter and David Turnley, two of my absolute favorite photographers, and also they're friends of mine, are world-renowned documentary photographers. They both have just come back. They're in Paris right now. They had just come back from the Ukraine. David is a Pulitzer Prize winner. Peter has won World Photo Awards. They're amazing. And they have also been a really big inspiration. They started photographing their own neighborhood in Indiana and made a book and became iconic photographers from documenting their own neighborhood. So as a young photographer growing up, I mean, you need to start somewhere. So you can start around the corner. Go photograph the guy in a deli, or photograph anybody, and make an interesting, compelling photo. But the interesting part is make a photo, but then find something out about it, and add a little blurb, add a little story to it. Because a photo that doesn't have a story is just a photo that you look at, and you don't know what's behind it. Like, I have a crazy photo on my wall that a friend of mine took. We were walking the streets of New York, and my friend Anastasia Caulfield, she's in SVA right now, and she's killing it. She's doing a great job. Street photography-wise, she's amazing. And she had taken this picture of a guy who's got a full grill and has got a wad of money in his mouth. And I have that picture hanging on my wall. And it's the coolest thing ever, because the story behind it was, like, we were walking down the street, and this guy just basically starts giving me a hard time because I have a camera and everything else. And I jumped right back at him hard. And he was like, damn, this guy's just not going to put up with anything. And we started laughing, and we sat down, and I bet we spent 40 minutes with these guys on the street. And he said to Anna, she's young, she's 25, and he said to Anna, you want a picture? I'll give you a picture. And he grabs a wad of money out of his mouth, or out of his pants, and sticks it in his mouth, and looks at her. And he's got a hat on, and she snaps this shot. And I took a picture of her making this shot. And it's so great because it's hanging on my wall. She gave me a photo frame, and it's one of the first picture I put in my new apartment when I got it. And when people look at it, they're like, what in the world? Why do you have that photo? And I said, well, you got to hear the story behind this photo. And, you know, there was a lot of graphic language going on between us, you know. So we won't share that, but it was fun. I mean, we had a really good time while this photo was being made, and many other photos as well. And then, you know, he had to get a photo with me, he got a photo with Anna, and it was a blast. It really was. So.
Well, you know, I totally understand how that goes. I love photographing interesting people, and there's so many of them out there if you just take a time to listen and to talk to people and learn a little bit about their lives. And like I said before, I feel like I'm the one that came away with the most out of a photo. They're thinking, oh, this is great, I got a photo, but I feel like I've got an experience that came out of it.
Oh, so. Yeah, and that's the thing, too. I mean, as a young photographer, I can encourage anybody to get out there, photograph their friends, stare at light, understand light, and take their friends and go places and see the light and make some photos and do something really dramatic, and not be, you know, I was on a photo walk, and I was with a camera store, and you know, I'm a one-man show. I don't use lights. I don't do anything. The guy comes out and says, hey, Rick, I got some reflectors for you. And I was like, yo, that's nice. You need to get that and put them in the
What do I
store.
do with those?
Yeah, I was like, I'm not using those. He's like, what do you mean? But I'm like, no, you don't understand what I do. I don't photograph America using lights, using reflectors, using anything. It is what it is. What it is. I see it. I make a picture, good, bad, or indifferent. It is what it is. It's life, and life is not technically correct. So,
Yeah, and in any of the stories you just mentioned, I haven't heard a single one. Oh, turn your head this way, or give any kind of
no.
posing directions or anything like that.
Oh God, no, no, no. I don't ever want to do that. I want to. Whenever I capture somebody, I want them to be as comfortable as they possibly can be, and in their own little world. And I capture it, and they look at it, and they think, I really like the way I look in this photo. And I'm like, that's all I ask for.
Cool.
If you like the way you look in a photo, then I've done my job. I'm a happy man, because it's not my job to sit here and if you're photographing reality, I'm not going to move them all over the place to get it right. I'm going to get it right where they're sitting, and like in the bars or in the restaurants or in anywhere else. I want to get what I get naturally.
Hmm.
It's just the way it works. I just have more fun doing that, and it's very unobtrusive. Nobody cares. And half the time they're like, when did you take that? Or how did you get that shot? So that's what I like.
Well, it's also called style, and it's something that I think that I've had people ask me, how do I know, how do I develop a style? And I always explain, well, first of all, it takes time. You have to go back and look at your own body of work to figure out what that is, because it's not always apparent. And it just takes time shooting over and over again before eventually you'll start to recognize your own style. And it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's funny because for a while I was a member of the PPA, and that just, obviously that does not fit for me, for what I do. I break every rule they ever talk about, and it's, so I finally said, yeah, I'm just not going to do this anymore. I said, it's perfect for the people that are looking to do that type of work, is fine, but it's definitely not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
So.
Well, listen,
But, hey,
Rick, I really, really, really appreciate your time, your effort, your training, and the stuff you shared, because I think the stories that you shared are so meaningful and hopefully inspiring to other photographers that they too can get out and do this same kind of work in their own town. I totally agree with what you're saying. Everybody's like, oh, I need to go here, I need to go there, some exotic place to take photos. But to me, what makes a great photographer is one that can take ordinary subjects and make them look extraordinary.
Well, that's like going to Tanzania and taking a picture of a bird on a branch.
How do you know it's Tanzania, right?
Well, exactly. I mean, if I'm going to a place, I want to go to a place that I can depict where I am, not just isolate things. It's like, my God, I mean, there's so many times that people have gone to Cuba and they've hired models. It's like, why?
Yeah.
There's so many people there that are more than photogenic, beyond photogenic. Everything there is it's crazy. To hire models, it's just nuts. You just want to photograph the people for who they are. Everywhere. It doesn't matter. You don't have to go, like I said, you don't have to go, and you said, you don't have to go to an exotic place to capture images that are, something. If you take an image and it really makes you happy, then that's a good thing. That's so very therapeutic for you as well as the person that you're photographing. You've had a conversation, you're happy with a photo, they're happy with a photo, you got a good day.
I agree. I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, I mean, that makes my day. There's times where, with the Fletcher Street crew, I mean, I can't take a bad picture of those guys. I mean, it's like every time I take a picture of one of them, one's better than the next for me. I'm like, oh my God, where am I? I'm in Philly. I'm an hour from home. I've traveled across the country and gotten photos, but I've gotten these crazy photos from Philly. So yeah, you've got to love it. You've got to love it. You can do things close to home without an issue at all. And everything you do is practice. You get better and better the more you shoot, the more you understand your settings, and learn your camera. And like I said before, get a good camera and drive it. enjoy it and make pictures that make you happy and hopefully make other people happy.
Well, it's the same thing you're saying. It's like, how do you learn to drive a car? You drive, right? I mean, you don't just sit there and read the book. That doesn't do any good. It's getting out and driving and making a few, hopefully nothing fatal mistakes, but learning how to drive and practice, and it's the same thing for photography.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
So.
And some people are gearheads, and if that's what they like, that's fine. But I'm never impressed by gear. I'm always impressed by the result.
Yeah, it's all about results, isn't it?
My socks off.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's taken with this or Hasselblad. It's whether the image works or it doesn't work.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, I agree.
So anyway, again, thank you very, very much for your time. I appreciate it. And if there's anything I can do for you, let me know.
I certainly will, Lee. Thank you so much for having me.
No, my pleasure.
Okay.
Well, hope you guys enjoyed that. Rick's an amazing guy. I think it's pretty obvious, and he really knows how to connect with people. And I think it's appropriate to kind of, repeat this quote that I showed you guys earlier. It doesn't matter if you're photographing a porter in a market in Marrakech or photographing the king of Morocco. You have the same sympathetic approach to everyone, is to just be nice, basically, is what he's saying. And I think that's really the key, and I think Rick epitomizes that very approach. And I also agree with what he's saying in that it doesn't matter where you live or where, there's people in your town that you could document, that you could take some interesting photos of. And so if that's the kind of thing you like to do, if you like to photograph people, then I encourage you to do that. So again, I just want to thank Rick very, very much. I appreciate it. Again, I encourage you to go back and look at, if you haven't watched part 1, that was on March 29th. Go back and look at that, and I think you will enjoy that as well. I also want again remind everybody to thank James, wish James a happy birthday. James Torrenzano. He's a member of the Photo Mentor group and also a very good friend. So James, happy birthday. So anyway, thanks again. We do this again. You guys, remind you that we do this every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you're a photographer and you're interested in learning anything about photography, we cover a wide range of things, mostly on the artistic side, not so much on the gear side. And if you're appreciate if you'd subscribe to the YouTube channel, always looking to do that. Helps us grow the channel, helps YouTube know that you're interested in this kind of stuff, so I'd appreciate it if you would do that as well. So anyway, I guess that's it for this week. If you, again, see you next week, and if you're interested, you can always reach out anytime. If you have questions, be sure and visit photomentoracademy.com. Put your name and email address in there, and we'll keep you up to date on what's going on as far as that's concerned. So anyway, thanks very much. And listen, enjoyed it, and see you next week.